People keep asking if I'm back, and I haven't really had an answer. But now, yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
What's going on, you guys? It is Corbin Stuckey of Pixel Talk here.
And Steven Van Ostenbridge of Pixel Talk here.
Finally, it's been so long.
I know. I'm sorry. I've been busy, guys.
It's okay. You've got a job, and I don't. I do freelance work. That's fine.
Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. It's okay. It's okay.
So tonight we're actually going to be reviewing John Wick because John Wick 3 is coming out this Friday. We're also going to be reviewing John Wick 2 when we get to watch that film. But tonight we just got done watching John Wick 1, and here are our thoughts. So, little disclaimer here. This is actually one of my favorite movies of all time. This is probably like my favorite original movie ever. And, if this isn't a movie that you like, then you will probably most likely die a very young death. And when you go to heaven, God is going to be like, oh, you don't like John Wick? You're going to hell. So that's my thoughts on people who don't like John Wick. Steven.
So, that being said, it is a very good movie. I thoroughly do enjoy this film. It's a film that, and we talked about this a little bit while we were watching it.
Yeah.
This is actually I think my fourth or fifth time seeing it. Mm-hmm. It's a film that when it came out, I really didn't think a whole lot of.
You mean like the trailers and stuff like that?
I saw the trailers.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be another movie like Jack Reacher, another kind of baby, maybe like a
generic. You would say you thought it would be
like
generic,
like a poor man's Die Hard in a way. And I really just thought it was going to be, another one of those just bang bang shoot 'em up movies. And
yeah,
it really it is and it isn't in a way, in that it's got a lot more substance to it, because you kind of initially feel a little bit more sympathetic for John Wick's character, knowing that he's lost his wife and the loss of his dog, which was basically, if you haven't seen the film, is a final parting gift from his late wife. And so he's like super attached to it immediately. And then when these Russian mobsters murder his dog, he kind of just goes off on a vengeance-fueled, because he was originally a hitman for the Russian mafia.
Yeah.
And he kind of gets back into his old ways.
Yeah, the movie kind of starts off as like a drama. Like, it's him coping with the loss of his wife, and then he gets this package in the mail with, he receives the dog, and it really takes a turn after these mobsters steal his car and kill the dog. It goes from like this drama to like this, oh my god, like, people are gonna die, because it's revealed that like through the first 10 minutes you kind of assume that he's just like this lonely guy. He's just someone who stays at home, and you feel as though he's a regular person. But then you start to see like certain hints that something's up. Like people are letting him into this airfield to ride his car and everything, and it's like, okay, like maybe he just like knows people.
He can nod at you, and you're just like, yeah, I'm gonna let him do whatever he wants.
And then it's kind of revealed that this guy has a reputation where the son goes back to his dad, who's like the head mafia guy, and then he explains who this guy is and who he stole from.
The way that it is explained, you kind of immediately, over the course of like that 10 to 12 second shot, you really kind of understand the gravity of who they're dealing with. And it's kind of superimposed with shots of John Wick taking a sledgehammer to a concrete block in his house because he's got stuff hidden underneath it. So basically he says, we refer to him as Baba Yaga, which is apparently Russian for boogeyman.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm not afraid of the boogeyman. He's like, he is who we would send to kill the boogeyman. And it's kind of immediately you're like, oh, this is a serious guy. And it kind of kind of makes you go like, oh, that's kind of hardcore.
Yeah, that's what I really like about this movie as well, is that there's so much subtext like in people's like behavior around him, and it's really funny as well, especially like when the son tries to turn in the car to get like a different license plate and different papers, and then the head owner punches him in the face, and he's like, "You'll hear from my father." And then the father's like, "Why did you like punch my son?" And he's like, "Well, he stole John Wick's car and killed his dog." And he was like, okay, I'm sorry, have a good day. Like, that is what really makes this movie. If it wasn't for stuff like that, this would be, like you said, like a very generic film. This film should have been bad. This should have been like a very forgettable film, but it's the plot in itself, where he's basically going around killing these mafia members because they killed his dog. As simplistic as like a plot as that is, it's what they do like in terms of the production and everything that really make it stand out. And the cinematography, it's great.
This is a film that is very reliant on Keanu Reeves' performance, and he does an absolutely breathtaking performance as John Wick in this film. Also, it was produced by a relatively unknown director. I believe his name is Chad Stolsky. I may be pronouncing that incorrectly. But prior to this film, he really was only known for the ill-fated 1994 movie The Crow that resulted in the death of Brandon Lee. So he's kind of a relatively unknown director. And you can kind of see a lot of skill in a lot of the way he places shots and lights shots. In particular, the nightclub scenes. Because that's a problem I have with a lot of these movies that have nightclub scenes, is that they're all very dark, they're very gritty, they're all very, singular colors. These ones have lots of bright blues, bright reds, and it doesn't take away from, kind of the somberness and kind of, the intensity of the scene, which I really like.
The red circle scene is one of my favorite parts of the movie. I feel as though the cinematography is just great. The action is great.
Yes.
And really good music as well. There's one scene where he kills this one dude, and it's such a calm song that's playing in the background.
Yes.
And then when he's chasing the sun throughout the club, it's dubstep bass, and it really
club music.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's just the movie has a way that it uses the music around them in the setting that they are, but it really corresponds well to what's actually happening on the screen. When he's
yes.
How many kills did you say that there were in this film?
I googled it halfway through. I believe it was 77 people.
He kills 77 people. He has
that's like a John that's like a Jack Bauer number of kills over the course of a day.
He has a quick scope cheat pretty much throughout this entire film.
No scopes everybody.
I do want to talk about Keanu Reeves' performance as well. It's easy to say that he did an excellent job, because he did, but it's also the whole entire movie, wouldn't you say, is kind of this meta representation of it, his career, wouldn't you say? Because you're a fan of The Matrix.
I'm a huge fan of The Matrix, and I'm very adamant that The Matrix is my favorite movie. And don't judge me for it, but it's Keanu Reeves kind of gets typecast as a very singular, non-emotional character. And there's one scene in particular in this film that you really kind of see Keanu show a lot more emotion than he does in a lot of his other films, except for maybe Bill and Ted's.
But dude, I would love to talk about Bill and Ted in the future.
But he when he's being interrogated by the guy. People keep asking me if I'm back, and I'm thinking I'm back. It's just you're just kind of yeah, go get him.
Yeah, I'm really open about this on my channel. Sometimes in my spare time, instead of actually rewatching a movie again, I collect Blu-rays a ton. But if I don't want to watch a movie all the way through, I'll just YouTube certain scenes, and that is a scene that I have YouTubed a lot, because it's a scene that you're right. It definitely showcases a lot of emotion, because it's really kind of the first time in the film after the death of this dog where he basically tells the audience how he's feeling. And sometimes that can be a bit of negativity when the character has to tell the audience how they're feeling. But I feel as though for this certain character in the position that he's put in, I feel as though it's totally justified, and it's so believable. Mm-hmm. You understand the amount of anger and frustration that he's going through, and just the way that he handles everything throughout the entire film. Even though he's pretty much killing people, totally justifiable. He killed a dog. They killed a dog.
You don't ever kill the dog.
If they killed my cat, if someone killed my cat,
don't ever kill the dog. Ever.
Also, the plot itself, I feel as though, even though it's not necessarily relatable in a sense, because this is kind of a hitman, the ideals that the movie represents, him going out to kill these people because they killed his dog, even though it's not really relatable, it's understandable in a sense.
It's understandable emotion, but it is also kind of unrelatable in the sense that a lot of this movie is pretty much centralized around the theme of revenge, and there's a couple of different scenes where he's we used to be, the mobster tells John, he's we used to be civil people, what happened to us? And you kind of see it's kind of a different way of presenting a character than you see in a lot of films, where a lot of kind of action movies will have a person who's basically dehumanized. He's this unstoppable badass. He kills all these people, and then they kind of humanize him down the road. Oh, look at his emotions. This is why he does. This movie starts the opposite way. So they humanize John at the beginning. They're oh, look at this guy who's he's got a family that he's lost. He's lost his dog. He's lost his car, which is a sweet car, by the way. and then it kind of turns him into that unstoppable badass. It's kind of a different way of presenting a character, which I kind of like, and I feel like is a lot of the reason why this film is so unique in this sort of way, because it does have, it is kind of, at its core, kind of the basic cut and dry action, like, just unstoppable revenge, action hero, hitman type movie. But it does kind of have that epicenter of, like, this guy's doing it because of what he's lost.
I was kind of thinking about this like today. Like, this film essentially is kind of like a second origin story for a character that we've never been introduced to. It's told throughout the entire film that he has this background. Like,
yes.
He used to do all of this stuff, and then he retired because he met his wife. And now he's back in, like, this scenario, and we're introduced to him for the first time, yet there's all of this exposition that everyone gives forth to the audience. Like, this is, like... And it's very vague, too. Like, he apparently, like... fulfilled this impossible task. I love the ambiguity around that because, like, it really leaves it up to the audience's interpretation as to what did he do? It must have been so impossible, and that's why he's gained the amount of respect throughout this entire film. I like how, because I often hate films that rely so heavily on exposition where they have to basically say, like, through dialogue, like certain characters and relationships and interactions that happened in the past that we're obviously probably not going to see. But this film makes it in a way where it's like, it's super interesting because even though we're probably not going to be seeing that ever, really, it's super, it builds the character and it really builds his reputation. You kind of understand, like, where everyone's coming from, even though we don't know what he did in the past. It really showcases that he's like a badass. And
an example of that is where I feel like the character is developed just enough to where he needs to be is Willem Dafoe's character.
Oh, yeah.
Because he's presented in the very beginning at John's funeral as, like, kind of an acquaintance. I'm here to offer condolences, and then he says something along the lines of, this is goodbye. And then you don't hear about him. You kind of forget about him after a while.
Yeah.
And then he comes back as, like, somebody that this Russian mobster has put a bounty on John's head, and he has reservations against killing him in the Continental scene.
Yeah.
And then he comes back later, and there's a throwaway line of, like, oh, you guys were very, very close, weren't you? And then he gets offed, spoilers, he gets offed in basically a shootout with the Russian guy and some of his cronies, and then you see John finding his body and being emotional. So that's enough to develop the character as somebody who was important, or at least, a good friend of John's that gets killed without having to go too much into the backstory, which I like that.
Yeah, so basically, like, when they were casting for this film, they actually wanted it to be an older gentleman because that kind of made sense in terms of the script and everything.
Liam Neeson's already in literally everything.
You don't want to cast Liam Neeson. Like, I feel as though if they didn't cast Keanu Reeves, they probably would have casted Liam Neeson for this kind of role. It would just totally make sense. It's a revenge movie.
And I feel like it would not have done as well at the box office if they had cast Liam Neeson, because I feel like the world, in a sense, is getting tired of these Liam Neeson action movies.
I mean, they're still good.
They're still good, but that's, like, all he does.
Yeah, they're only good if, like, you didn't watch the Liam Neeson movie last year. Like,
yes.
I can watch a Liam Neeson movie and be like, okay, that was a good movie. However, I've seen so many multiple different Liam Neeson movies. Like, it's not that he's doing a bad job. It's just, it's recycled pretty much. With this, it makes sense, and I understand why they did the casting, because it is kind of like an experienced actor where, like, we haven't really seen Keanu Reeves in a while. Like, at the time when this movie came out in 2014, we hadn't seen him in a while. The last time I think I had seen him was, like, the day the Earth stood still, and I think that really ruined his career.
But at the same time, he's a very well-known name.
Oh, yeah. And when he came back in this film, I just, like I said, there's like this meta feeling where, like, everyone's asking him if he's back and he doesn't really have an answer. And then, in that middle portion of the film, he's like, yeah, I'm thinking I'm back. He's basically talking about his career. Mm-hmm. Like, and there's a lot of moments like that. And even in the third movie that's coming out in the trailer, there's like it's not even subtle at all. There's a Matrix reference.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like, it's just this movie, this franchise is basically like a representation of, like, his comeback, pretty much.
And his character is very similar to Neo in The Matrix in that he's, basically an unstoppable badass that is incapable of showing a lot of human emotion. And I think that's kind of might be a little bit the reason why I like it, being such a big Matrix fan. But I've always liked Keanu Reeves as an actor, and I think that his character, his casting in this film was a very, integral part to its success, in my opinion.
He did a lot of training for this film as well. Yes. He spent months, and even in the second one, he did a lot of gun training, but for this specifically, he really made sure that he was in top shape because, like a lot of other actors out there, not a lot of actors, but like Tom Cruise, he really wanted to do his own stunts because he understood that it was very important for this film specifically, and like he's a badass in real life. Like that's one of the reasons why I like this film and films like Mission Impossible is when the actor commits himself to doing actual stunts. That's when the movie becomes believable for me, because I have a hard time believing certain action movies, but when they're actually doing the stuff on screen, I'm like, bravo. Yeah. Bravo.
Because that takes a lot of guts to be able to do something like that.
And then, like, because we're kind of talking about, as we were watching the film, the reason also he gets away with a lot of stuff is because of the respect that everybody has for him, because there's a scene where, like, he, puts a gun to, like, one of the bodyguards, and he's like, okay, like, I can just walk away.
Yeah,
like,
why don't you take the night off?
Yeah. Like, thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Like, there's basically two kinds of people in this franchise. There's people who know not to mess with John Wick. Like, don't mess with him at all.
Yeah.
And there's people who have either, have not heard of John Wick, don't really know who John Wick is, or just too stupid to not mess with John Wick.
And a lot of the people that do are motivated by this bounty that's been put on his head. So they're like, oh, well, you'd violate the rules of this hotel where apparently you're not supposed to ever do like any killing or anything in to kill this guy, and we'll like double your bounty or whatever. But a lot of the people do what they're doing to try to get John Wick because of the bounty on his head. Otherwise they would know well enough not to leave this guy completely alone.
Yeah, and it's explored heavily in the second film, but what I really liked about this first film is that it presents like not only this badass character and these awesome action sequences, but it also showcases that this is like some kind of like underground universe where like basically a lot of these assassins or hitmen go to this hotel.
They have their own hotel. They have their own weird gold coin currency. They have their own cleaning
they have
service.
Currency.
Like they have their own weird bar and doctors and like nightclub. Well, of course they have nightclubs.
And the same like front desk man is there.
Yeah,
I love him.
Does he live there? Like what's his deal? He's never not there.
What's that show? Yeah, he's from The Wire. I've never seen The Wire. I need to watch that.
I've never seen it.
But like, I like that actor, especially in John Wick. I've just never seen The Wire. Like, I hear like it's like one of those shows like Breaking Bad. I've seen Breaking Bad, but I haven't seen The Wire. So I feel as though I need to watch The Wire. Things? Yeah, they're two different things, but like I'm just saying they're like on the same level of like, hey, you need to watch these shows.
Everyone and their mom needs to see it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never seen it.
Breaking Bad is the best show you've ever seen, except maybe The Wire.
Breaking Bad is the best show I've ever seen, except maybe The Wire.
But yeah, the movie itself, like, you were kind of mentioning earlier that you had some negatives about the movie.
Yeah, my only real complaint about this movie is after a while, and you see all of what's happening and everything that John Wick does, his character kind of becomes a bit uncompelling in that, like, how is this one guy able to take out this many, like, hardened Russian mobsters? And, like, I mean, he gets shot, like, a couple of times. He takes some damage. He's not invulnerable. But, like, for the most part, like, he gets shot in the shoulder, and, like, gets shot in the ribs. He gets looked at by the doctor, and the doctor's like, well, it's going to hurt for a while. But, like, here, take these pills, and you'll basically be able to do everything you were able to do normally. Just,
Yeah.
Like, you might bleed a little bit more or something like that. And it kind of makes his character, like, in a way not believable. Because it's like, how is that one person that good at all of that? And
so your problem is that the character, like for you, is unbeatable.
Exactly. He's like a Michael Myers in a way. You can't beat him.
So I've been
and I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's like also like little throwaway lines where when he does finally confront the mob boss, and he's like, oh well, they'll know you're coming, and he's like, it doesn't matter. And like and towards the beginning when he's like, oh yeah, well you'll kill, like John Wick will find you, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Like I get what you're saying, and I totally agree with you. I mentioned in my Shazam review that I was going to be doing a review of Man of Steel. I have not done that yet, and there's like a reason behind that. So I am doing an extensive amount of research on the character Superman because I really want to be able to, like, when I do my like Man of Steel review, I want to be able to understand the character and why there are a lot of people out there that like him. There are fans of Batman, and there are fans of
Superman.
There's people out there kind of like you that mentioned that. I know this worded like, how you just said that you don't necessarily like the one nitpick that you have of John Wick is that he's unbeatable in this movie.
Yeah.
There are people out there who don't really like Superman 100% because he's unbeatable.
He has a weakness.
Yeah,
We're getting so far off
but
topic.
it is leading on to like what I'm. So basically, I'm doing all this research on Superman, and I'm gonna most likely be doing an analysis video on the character like later on in the future. It's way off, but. Basically, this is what I've come to the conclusion to. I don't think a character necessarily needs to be... I don't think they... So a character to me, like I know a lot of characters out there, when they're flawed, like that's what really makes people like them. Like if a character has a flaw, it makes them relatable in a sense. And that's why, you know, we like Spider-Man and, you know,
A lot
Iron
of them have
Man.
like a tragedy or something that people can relate to.
Yeah, exactly. And when a character, I've noticed this too, like when a character is unbeatable, that's when a lot of people start to have a little bit of negativity towards them. And my argument is like a character doesn't necessarily have to be beatable, but he has to have things that have happened to him in the past that make him somewhat relatable. And one of the things that I really appreciate about John Wick is that the movie showcases that he does have a past and he was wanting to like start this life, but unfortunately he lost his wife. And I think like that's the takeaway for me specifically, is that this is a character who's lost a lot and lost even more throughout the film, and he decides to do something about it. And that's why I totally love this film.
That's fair.
But I understand like what you're saying. I posted on Facebook why people like what people thought of Superman, and I understood like their comments like 100%. I'm just stating like why I like the character pretty much. I am going to love doing this Superman analysis video and just like doing like all these comments.
How
but
much you love comic books.
yeah, but you know, in like, you know, an argument, just to get this out, there are times where like he does get his ass kicked. Like, you know, when they steal the car and kill his dog. But granted, he's not in that John Wick mode. He's like wanting to be done with all this, and he doesn't really fight back. And there's the scene where, like, you know, they almost bag him to death, but because, you know, Willem Dafoe, like everyone else, respects him so much, he's able to get away. And I feel as though it's not only him being a badass that gets him out of these situations, it's the reputation that he has that, like, gets him out of these situations as well. Like, how everyone handles John Wick being around everybody.
He's a larger-than-life person in the film.
Yeah.
And, like, that kind of follows him around. People, like, respect the name behind him, and they're, like... They know he's coming. They're like, you know, he's more like a monster than a man. Like, you know he's coming. There's nothing you can do about it.
I love it.
I love that line.
like I love the scene where like the father, like he's just sitting there and he like smokes a joint. Like it's probably not even happened yet, but he just assumes that like his son is already dead.
Yep.
And then he
accepts it.
And he picks up the phone and like he just knows what it's about, and he's just like, make the arrangements.
Yep.
Like. It's little stuff like that, because this is what this film could have been. Like, I can foresee, like, you know, Hollywood taking the script and making it like, you know, like those movies that try to be like a Quentin Tarantino movie, but they're terrible?
Yes.
So this movie could have been just like that. It could have been like a Quentin Tarantino knockout. I'm not saying Quentin Tarantino is great, but there are films out there that try to mimic
copycats and mimics
Quentin Tarantino.
And
I can foresee the trailer being like, dun 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 dun. They tried to kill me, and they killed my dog. Dun 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 dun. Man, we gotta do something about this John Wick. Dun 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 dun. He's coming this summer. Dun 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 dun. That's what this movie could have been. And for some odd reason, this movie was beyond that. It has a style of its own.
Yeah.
It's actually like kind of like the style is like fancy. Really, they're staying at this hotel, and it's almost like neo-gothic kind of.
Yes, it is, and I really do like the style of it, because it's not as gritty as a lot of these kind of movies are in a way.
Yeah,
it's got more of an aesthetically appealing feel to it, and it really kind of adds to the feel of it and makes it a little bit, sets it apart from other films of the same genre.
Yeah, and like I was saying before, like just the cinematography overall, like. There shouldn't be this good of cinematography in a script like this. For some reason, like, it just, like, not only is it, like, does it work, but it's just so good.
Yeah.
Like, everything, like about it, like, we keep going back to the scene, just like the club scene. I love the blue and red contrast. I want to be able to, like, make a scene like that in the future using that type of lighting, or maybe work with that director of photography, because that's great. That's honestly like the best lighting.
And it's not just that. Like you see like different way shots are angled, different like you see.
Yeah.
There's a lot of like where they'll have transitions where they'll impose it against the skyline of New York City, or like an overhead view of the streets of Manhattan, and like the Brooklyn Bridge, and like different New York City sites. And I really like how they do that.
Oh yeah, no,
it's very interesting and like a masterful way to like kind of craft these shots.
So this was filmed in New York, right?
Yes.
The
set in New York anyway.
The film kind of in a sense like it doesn't really say like where it takes place, but you can just tell like okay, that's New York. I kind of get a sense that it's kind of like the movie Seven, where it's not necessarily mentioned like where the city takes place, but it's kind of like alive, and like you kind of understand like maybe not the city overall, but like it's a world of its own though, because we have like these like underground like assassins, like paying like this,
underground assassins, the Russian mob, like all
like this they're paying this currency and like staying at this hotel. Like even though like this most likely takes place in New York, I feel as though this is just kind of like this own world, and I think that's really there's a lot of extra things that make this movie great. Like this could have been just like a regular action film, but it's like number one, Keanu Reeves' career is like so meta in this. Number two, it's how the character is written and how like everybody like presents the character through dialogue. Number three, it's this world that like really just brings out this interesting factor into
world
it.
Within a world, yeah.
Yeah, and number four, the cinematography, which we talked about, and just I love the character. But I absolutely love this film. I would definitely put this on like my top 10 for sure. I absolutely love this film and just the idea around it. I think it's done so well. We've been really wanting to do this thing for a while now where we've wanted to review random movies on the channel where we just kind of review our favorite films. And you've talked about this a lot.
Yeah.
Where we just kind of like review our favorite films. And I wanted to do this specifically because not only would we be reviewing a film that has a sequel coming out on Friday, which is relevant right now, it's my favorite film as well, So I got that out of the way. That is one of my favorite films, John Wick.
All right.
So I guess we're going to be doing John Wick 2, maybe John Wick 3, like later on this week. And then we'll do your favorite movie.
All right.
Maybe The Matrix?
Maybe The Matrix.
Maybe.
I have quite a few favorite movies. I have to give a couple honorable mentions.
There we go. So yes, guys, that's our review of John Wick. Comment down below what you guys thought of this film. If you've seen it yet, like this video, share it, and please subscribe to Pixel Talk if you haven't yet for more movie reviews, trailer reactions, movie news, and gaming content.
It's great.
I would hope so.
It's great.
I would hope that they wouldn't subscribe to content that they don't like. Are you guys just puppets?
All right, guys, so that's our review.
But honestly, thank you guys so much for the support. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And look forward to more videos. And again, thank you. I am Corbin Stuckey.
I am Stephen Van Ossenbridge.
And this is Pixel Talk.